Khal Drogo is an absolute unit when it comes to fighting. As we see often in Game of Thrones, every fight he is faced with, he wins. So what if Khal Drogo kept his promise to Viserys and attacked Westeros? This was actually a comment on one of my videos, and it honestly had me laughing. On today's video, we explore why Khal Drogo would have no chance in winning. Don't get me wrong, he is the best at what he does. Fighting, leading, and other things that would be deemed wrong in today's society. Yes, I am talking about what he does to women and other men. But he was the best in those things in Essos, a place far beyond the sea and filled with rich, singular cities. Now, you already know my answer. The Dothraki would be destroyed, but to make things interesting, I will point out the logistics first. How many would join Khal Drogo, and how they would get across the narrow sea. Second, I will point out the best places to land. Third, I will cover what season it would be best to land in. Fourth, I will get an accountability of who would join Khal Drogo and the Targaryens. Lastly, I will describe how the major battles would go. Now that we have everything settled, let's get started. Khal Drogo's Khalasar is one of the largest among the Dothraki, with an estimated strength of 40,000 to 50,000 riders. This would not only include the elite mounted warriors, but also various support units such as scouts, herders, and non-combat followers. When Khal Drogo's horde is mobilized for war, it's not just a military force. It's an entire mobile civilization, including their families, animals, and supplies. This massive size would make it a formidable force, but it also comes with logistical challenges, especially when crossing the narrow sea. The Dothraki traditionally shun the sea, viewing it as a barrier rather than a pathway. Drogo would need to overcome this cultural hesitation by forming alliances with those who could provide ships. One viable ally would be Volantis, the oldest and proudest of the free cities. Volantis has a large fleet and a desire to spread its influence. They might agree to transport Drogo's Khalasar in exchange for future trade privileges or a promise of shared spoils from Westeros. Another option could be the Ironborn, known as the greatest sailors in the world. The Ironborn under Euron Greyjoy, or another ambitious leader, might see a partnership as an opportunity to re-establish their dominance over the seas and raid Westeros. Now let's get one thing straight. I think the Greyjoys are the dumbest kingdom in Westeros. King Robert should have killed every single one of them. However, if Drogo promises them free reign over the western coasts and valuable loot, they might be willing to ferry the Dothraki across. This alliance could also be cemented through marriage, or by leveraging Daenerys Targaryen's claim to the throne, giving the Ironborn a strategic stake in the invasion. Alternatively, Khal Drogo might take the approach of raiding and capturing ships. The Dothraki could sack coastal towns in the free cities like Myrlis or Tyrosh, seizing their ships and forcing local captains to aid their crossing. While this would be a risky approach due to potential retaliation, it could be viable if Drogo decides speed and aggression are more important than diplomacy. Old Town, the oldest city in Westeros, is a strategic and lucrative target for Drogo's invasion. Situated at the mouth of the Honeywine River, Old Town offers easy access to fertile lands and valuable resources. The wealth of Old Town, combined with its position as a hub of trade and culture, would allow Drogo's horde to establish a strong economic and strategic foothold. Securing this city would enable the Dothraki to launch raids deep into the Reach, targeting wealthy estates and granaries. The Reach itself is a land of open fields, vineyards, and farmlands, ideal for the Dothraki riders who thrive in open spaces. The wide, flat plains would give them a significant advantage, allowing them to use their speed and maneuverability to outflank and overwhelm any resistance. The Tyrells and their bannermen would pose a threat, but by controlling Old Town and the mouth of the Mandor River, Drogo could cut off the Tyrell supply lines and starve out any opposing forces. Landing in the north, especially at White Harbor, would be disastrous for Khal Drogo's horde. The north is a land of dense forests, rivers, mountains, and vast, cold expanses. Terrain completely unsuitable for the Dothraki style of warfare. In addition, the harsh winters and freezing temperatures would severely hamper the horde's mobility. Horses, the backbone of the Dothraki army, would struggle to find adequate grazing and shelter. Moreover, the northern houses, led by House Stark, are fiercely loyal to one another. They would likely unite swiftly against any foreign invader, using their knowledge of the terrain to launch guerrilla attacks and sabotage the Dothraki's movements. The North's many fortified castles and keeps, such as Winterfell, Moat Cailin, and Deepwood Motte, would provide natural defensive points that could hinder Drogo's advance. Any prolonged campaign in the north would result in massive casualties for Drogo's forces, as the harsh climate and the resilient northern resistance would wear down his horde. Summer in Westeros is when the land is at its most bountiful. The seas are calmer, allowing a safer crossing for the Dothraki, who would already be wary of the water. Upon landing, the warm weather would be familiar to Drogo's horde, enabling them to quickly adapt and thrive. The abundance of crops, livestock, and supplies would provide enough resources for the horde to sustain themselves and their horses. In summer, the wealthy southern regions such as the Reach, the Stormlands, and the Riverlands would be brimming with resources. The Dothraki strategy could involve a series of swift raids, looting settlements and farms to stockpile supplies, while maintaining the mobility needed to avoid prolonged sieges or large-scale battles that might slow them down. Winter would be the worst possible time for an invasion. The seas during winter storms are rough and treacherous, making the voyage from Essos to Westeros more perilous. Even if Drogo's forces managed to cross, the cold climate would be brutal for the Dothraki, who are accustomed to warmer plains. The lack of food, combined with freezing temperatures, would lead to a high mortality rate among the horde, particularly the horses, which are vital for their combat style. Furthermore, Westeros's resources dwindle in winter. Raiding would yield little reward, and the horde's supply lines would be stretched to the breaking point. The native lords, familiar with fighting in winter conditions, could use the weather to their advantage, leading to a war of attrition that would ultimately favor the defenders. Initially, Drogo's invasion would provoke a defensive response from most of Westeros. However, certain factions might see an alliance with the Dothraki as an opportunity to shift the balance of power. House Greyjoy, the Ironborn, are natural allies for Drogo. The promise of pillaging the western coasts and access to loot would attract them. The Greyjoys could provide naval support and strike at key coastal locations, while Drogo's horde rampages inland. House Martell, Dorne, with its history of resisting central rule and its desire for revenge over past wrongs, could be persuaded to join Drogo if Drogo promised to install Daenerys Targaryen as queen. The Martells, who have Targaryen blood through marriage, would have a reason to fight alongside the Dothraki, This alliance could open the southern regions of Westeros to the Dothraki, allowing them to bypass more fortified areas in the north. I am a bit iffy on them joining Drogo, mostly because Dorne looks down on a lot of what they do. Also, some smaller houses, discontent with their current status or in opposition to their liege lords, might also join Drogo's cause if they see a chance for power or wealth. However, the major houses like the Lannisters, Starks, and Tyrells would likely band together to repel the invaders. The first major battle would likely occur in Old Town, where the High Towers, supported by the Tyrells, would attempt to repel Drogo's assault. The Dothraki, with their speed and skill in open combat, would have the upper hand in the flat fields surrounding Old Town. If Drogo can seize the city, he would have a major port and a gateway to controlling the Risha's resources. Another critical conflict could occur in the Riverlands. The Tullys and their bannermen would rally to defend their lands. The Dothraki's speed would be both an advantage and a hindrance here, as the numerous rivers would complicate their movements. If the Horde can adapt to these conditions, they could secure the heart of Westeros, but failure would result in a major setback. The climactic battle could take place outside King's Landing. The Dothraki, allied with Greyjoy naval forces, would launch a massive assault. The defenders, led by the Lannisters, would fortify the city's walls and use siege weaponry. This battle would test whether Drogo's horde can penetrate Westeros's most fortified city. To conclude, Khal Drogo's horde, while vast and powerful, would face immense logistical challenges in Westeros. Feeding and transporting tens of thousands of riders across the narrow sea would be difficult. The Dothraki, lacking naval skills and siege expertise, would struggle against Westeros's fortified castles and cities. Without proper resupply routes and the ability to maintain long sieges, Drogo's forces would be at risk of starvation and attrition, especially during harsh winters. The terrain and climate of Westeros would further hinder the Dothraki's effectiveness. Their strength lies in open plains, but Westeros's diverse landscapes, forests, mountains, and the North's cold would be obstacles. Horses, critical for their mobility, would suffer in the winter, slowing the horde down. This unfamiliar environment would make it challenging for Drogo to gain a foothold, limiting the effectiveness of his raids and campaigns. So what do you think? Do you agree or disagree with me? Let me know in the comments your thoughts. Thank you for watching. This has been the Critical Analysis Hub, and I will catch you in the next video.